in my lifetime, I hope to make a difference. It's something that most of my life I've been on the river. It's something I've grown to love by growing up in the community here. And just the fact that I paddle a lot on the river, I don't fish a whole lot, but I've met people from as far away as Washington, D.C. that have come to have their vacation, to get away from the rat race and to get out into nature. And they've come here to paddle for a few days. And that really said something to me. And then I knew, other people knew of our Black River, and they knew that they wanted to come and preserve it and keep it and enjoy it the way it is. Because they wouldn't keep coming here if it was changing. There has to be a balance between the people that want to hunt on the river, maybe for ducks, the people that have land on the river that want to preserve their natural state and not have it covered in litter, but at the same time, the timber industry, which we hope will abide by the best management practice rules of the South Carolina forestry, so that they can cut the timber off their property but not destroy the borders of the river, riparian borders of the river. Or there's just the recreational enthusiasts that want to ski maybe on the river, not here, but down in Georgetown County, or maybe want to kayak or paddle, or the fishermen. There's a lot of different entities that should have a say-so in how the river is going to be going into the future.
I've been asked, what is this Black River paddle all about? It's about making an impact by inspiring the good stewardship of our waters and our lands. It's about bringing these experiences to you in hopes of fostering a greater respect. We have a long and deep connection to our wild places. They fill us with peace, wonder, and curiosity. We have paddled down this river, camping along its sandy banks, to experience this place of memories, to learn from and understand our river, so that we can protect what might be lost, not only in our wild places, but also within ourselves, our youth, and our future. Paddle along with us and get to know our Black River. We begin our 90-mile journey in historic Kingstree, South Carolina at Gilland Memorial Park. Settled by Europeans in 1732, this landmark site on the Black River was noted for its giant white pine. Named the Kingstree, the town was then settled, the pine protected, starting off a heritage of preservation along this river that lasts until today. At the landing, we met Dr. Lewis Drucker, a Kingstree native and lifelong caretaker of the Black River. He shared with us his passion for this place, explained how important the river is to the people of Williamsburg County, and I can agree with him. I'm a native of Georgetown County, and I was lucky enough to grow up on the Black River and later on the Waccamaw River. I understand our deep human connection to these places. As long as people have been in South Carolina, people have been on the Black River, and it has truly shaped our culture. I fear that as we move forward into this technological revolution, we're losing connections to wild places, to the places that have shaped us spiritually. As we paddle down the river, we will turn our cameras on and focus our lenses upon the human connections and insights that we find along the way. I hope to share with you wild places that you've never seen, the wildlife, the environments, the people, the sights, the sounds, and I hope that you enjoy this journey. Natives love this place. You can see them fishing along its sandy banks, canoeing down the river, or enjoying a moment of solitude on a dockside. As we paddle down the river, however, we started to lose that connection to civilization. The sounds of the highway faded away, and we began to see sights and sounds of wildlife, or in this case, some domesticated ducks. Soon, however, we saw our first wild creature. This great blue heron is a beautiful and common sight along the Black River. As we paddled down, we would scare him. He'd fly on ahead, and after a couple of turns, we would be graced enough to see him again. After the heron, we saw our first signs of beaver. These elusive mammals are common on the Black River. However, it's very rare to see one. You can see their signs everywhere, and as we paddled downstream, I would try to pick out some of the coolest pieces of carved wood, and I even brought a couple of souvenirs home. When we go out to places like this, we're reminded of what used to be. This river changes on a yearly basis, and it has changed over the millennia. We can see signs of ancient limestone that date back millions of years. We can also see human structures that go back 20 years. This rusty railroad truss is a very interesting feature along the river. As I floated underneath, I looked up to see bird nests, to see graffiti. I wondered, how many boats have floated underneath? How many times has the train thundered overhead? You could almost picture kids in their youth jumping off of the trestle into the river, the laughing and the screaming that could be heard along its banks. These places are important. They're important to who we are. It might not be the prettiest trestle in the world, but you can feel the history here. As we continued to paddle down the river, we saw various canals along the way. Many of these canals were dug by enslaved peoples on early plantations, or possibly by the timber industry. These canals have been naturalized over the years and serve as important ecological environments, habitats for wildlife, and also function for storm water drainage. It wasn't long until we came upon our second site that I wanted to stop and ask Dr. Drucker about.
We're on Black River in Williamsburg County, South Carolina. We're about 1.25 miles downriver from Kingstree. And this part of the river has always been cleaned up, at least for 5 of the last 6 years, by the Kingstree Lions Club. Because we knew that we have a beautiful river, but it's going to take some taking care of, some maintenance. So we've cleaned it up every year. Now on this stretch of the river, I'm afraid we've got a pile of trash. If you look behind me here, you see some of what I'm talking about. This part of the river, as you come down below Kingstree, the flow comes straight into this shortcut. This is not the river here. The river makes a serpentine to the left here. And so in this part of the river, the deep water and the flow comes straight ahead. And so consequently, all the trash and the debris piles into this little shortcut here. That's why it piles up so dramatically here. The reason we also need to clean it up is because when we have low water like we do now, boats can't get through, whether they're fishing boats or kayaks, canoes, whatever, John boats fishing. And so if they try to go that way, there's no water. It's maybe places in there where we'll have to drag these kayaks because there's only 5 inches of water. And so if we can make this area open, and if we can keep it open without the debris and the trash filling in this area, we got a navigable river. Whether the water's up high and they can go in the river serpentining that way, or whether the water's low and they can take the shortcut straight through here. It'll help paddlers, it'll help recreation, it'll help fishermen. Everybody wins if we can keep this part of the river clean. That's our challenge that we face today.
Tell me about some of the items you've pulled out of the river and kind of paint us a picture of just how much effort it takes to come in here with a crew and some of the things y'all pull out.
Well, this year, for example, we had 60 to 70 people helping us on that cleanup in late May. By early July, this was filled up again. But we've got kayaks, canoes, John boats, all with the help of local, in fact, we had Sheriff's Department and county government helping us this year, but a lot of paddling groups from all over this half of South Carolina come in to help us annually with this. This year we got two 275-gallon totes out of the river, you know, those plastic totes with the aluminum framing. We got 2 of those out. We got 3 10-foot wooden benches out of the river. We got about 7 tires on rims out of the river. And we also got 3 pickup loads full of trash of just your bottles, your cans, things like that. It's a sad sight that we have to get that every year, but somebody's got to do it. And it's our river, and if we want to keep it beautiful, this is how we're going to do it. If you want to. But it is pretty swift up in here, going through here. Huh? Oh yeah. Well, it's pretty short. I mean, it just goes here to there because this is just a loop.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
you
it's
see
a
it goes
dry
all the way
loop right
around.
now.
It's a great example of how
Not to do it.
difficult, well, just how
Not to do it, right?
how thick it can get. The Black
lucky.
River,
Not lucky.
it's not a novice river, that's for sure.
See what I mean about fast moving? Just kind of hold yourself where you want to go.
We picked our way down the river, paddling, trudging, pulling, climbing, swimming, mile after mile, making painstakingly slow progress. We had hundreds of pounds of gear because we had planned to stay for 4 nights. So yeah, a lot of this trip involves this. Really difficult spots where you got to get out, get in the water, and shove the kayaks through. So good thing it's not snake season. Sorry, puppy. Alrighty. Alrighty. This is how you get $15,000 worth of gear through a swamp, right? This is what filmmaking is. All right. Uh-oh. Gonna have to get out one more time. Yay! This beautiful water. We were having such an amazing time out there. However, Dr. Drucker and I have both spent our lives on the river. We're very comfortable out here. We also attempted this in the late fall when water temperatures were cool and most of the reptiles are asleep. It was fun. It's like a little mini rapid. All right, Tim.
like a glove.
Oh, this is beautiful.
I can see you digging a trail in the sand with your keel.
All right, see what happens.
Tim,
Force be with you.
Tim going down Tim Sluice.
There we go. Maybe. Freedom.
I've been using the paddle as a pole for the most part.
No, it doesn't lock.
That is the way in which we came. And this is the way we're going.
As we slowly made our way down the river, we experienced such beautiful places.
All right.
Ancient trees, these amazing shallows,
Alrighty.
sandbars, cypress swamps.
Good thing there are no alligators.
We saw turtles and a few snakes. We scared deer, but it was very difficult to get a shot of them. And the occasional mallard or wood duck would fly up ahead of us as we came around a bend.
Look at those cypress knees. It's so thick in there.
We experienced very tight and narrow rapids, wide, shallow stretches of sand. But throughout the first 30 miles, there was always trees and obstacles in our way.
Hey, Pup. Oh, this is a beautiful stretch. Looks like beaver activity.
Landing here. Is this gonna align?
There's a final glimpse of the sun.
We still got a good half mile to go there.
I think
This is a
when we get there, I think we'll have just enough time to fly the drone up and get that last glimmer of sun before it goes under. That's the cool thing about a drone, is that the sun will set down here. You can fly it up and then catch the sunset again.
you better paddle.
Yep.
The sun was setting on us fast, but we got to experience the most beautiful sky, the most beautiful colors as the trees start to turn into their fall colors. You can notice the water bugs dancing on the river as we paddle through. I wanted to find the perfect campsite where I could catch the moon coming up over the treetops and get some amazing time lapses. Dr. Drucker was anxious to find a place, but as you can see, it was a beautiful paddle. Dr. Drucker and other locals work tirelessly to keep this river clear, putting in hundreds of man-hours of hard work out in this river on a monthly basis. But this river is completely natural. It is a cypress tupelo swamp with oak trees, willows, pines, hickory, holly, and more. A beautiful and natural place that is constantly shedding, constantly changing. And it is so hard for a small team to manage alone.
Woo. Deep and cold. Oh no. Oh no, trash bag, don't get snagged.
I felt like an amateur, a newbie out here. I'm so comfortable in the river, but this place is so different. We came around the bend and we found the perfect campsite. A place where I could get a shot of the moon rising over the trees. I could not wait.
So anywhere to the right. So the sun's gonna rise directly that direction. So having a camera that way, we'll be able to get it. Yep, this is it. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Because there's like a channel, yeah. And that's exactly the direction we want to look.
Moving average. We burned the top, boys. How did I make it? 6.09.
Yeah, I've done better. But y'all, we've got hickory nuts just left here for us. It's a sign.
It's hard to describe the feeling of finding a campsite like this. We're miles from civilization. Well, 6.09 miles from civilization. And it was a hard-earned 6.09 miles. A wonderful 6.09 miles. As we settled in and unpacked, I was looking forward to picking Dr. Drucker's brain. I wanted to know about this part of the Black River, about its history, about his local knowledge, about some of the characters and stories that he had from the distant past, or maybe the not so distant past. Every time I fly my drone up, my little white dog Falcor just goes wild. He chased it up the sandbar, wagging his tail, jumping up in the air. He truly loves it, and this is why I take him out here. One day, I look forward to taking my children out here. I believe that these wild and scenic places offer so much enjoyment and so much natural fun that can not only benefit us, but our children, our pets,
telling us
anyone.
about a man named Constantine.
Yeah, Conrad Constantine. Conrad was in Kingstree, a resident of Kingstree, but Conrad was one of the War Between the States veterans, one of the Confederate veterans, and came back to live in Kingstree. But what was neat about this guy was it was almost like he was one of the first river rats, because he spent so much time on the river and around the river. And you think about the river we went down today, how low it is, and how impassable it seems. Well, Conrad Constantine in the early 1900s had a boat, a passenger boat on Black River here, and he would leave out of Kingstree and go upriver and downriver carrying passengers. Now this was a motorized boat, and it was, you know, to read the dimensions of it, it's like a 20-something foot boat. And it was, I don't know exactly whether it was like a barge or what, but it had an outboard motor on it. And to read some of the passages that he talked about and some of the distances that he went, you wonder, how did he ever get something that big up and down the river? But all the stories, because he used to write, the newspaper in Kingstree used to be the County Record. And so he would have a column in like weekly or semi-weekly where he would write of different occurrences in town or different occurrences on the river or something he was doing or people that were coming and going, and or talk about some of his war between the states experiences that he had. But it was amazing to hear this guy talk. Now, a book was published recently called Poor Conrad, because that's how he referred to himself a lot of times, as Poor Conrad. And it was excerpts from the county record of all of his articles all through a few years, and they made it into a book form. It's really neat to read. But he's buried in the Williamsburg Presbyterian Cemetery in Kingstree. He's buried there as a Confederate veteran. But it's really neat to hear him talk about the river and experiences. Like when we're on the river, a lot of times you would be experiencing the exact same thing that he was experiencing in the early 1900s. So that was really cool. Or the places that he would name, you would try to figure out where exactly on the river is he talking about, because he would talk about certain landmarks or landings or things like that. And that's part of what I'm concerned about, is whenever someone comes along and wants to change the name of a landing. Because if you get somebody like Conrad Constantine in the early 1900s talking about a certain landing, well, if someone comes along here now and says, well, let's change the name of the landing, maybe a property owner decides he wants to name it after himself. Well, now you come another generation behind us, and they're looking at the books and the history and the literature, and they're trying to figure out, well, is the landing that Conrad Constantine was talking about in the early 1900s the same landing that my grandfather was talking about here in 2021? I'm not quite sure, because it's got a whole different name. And that's why, history, the people that try to change history are really screwing things up. If you could just take history and keep history the way it is, and make it a part of who we are and where we are around here, because the river is not changing. The river is the same river it was way back. And even though you wonder, how did he get that big boat up the river? Or down the river? How did he turn the thing around? I mean, you got to figure the cypress trees were falling into the river then, just like they are now. You would figure.
We're struggling in kayaks to get through.
I wonder if it was treated more as a transportation system back then, or because I know that going farther back, at least, I guess really I know about the Browns Ferry area, but that was, pole barges, and a lot of times they'd move the lumber down the river. And so I've always wondered, it was kind of like their highway system. I've always wondered if did they maintain it more? Did they have cleanup crews? Because how did these big pole barges get down?
Well, where we came through town is Mill Street Landing, at the end of Mill Street.
Yeah, so
because there was a mill at the end of the street at the river where they would bring the timber down the river to that point. And so it was right there at the end of the street at the river. So yeah, there was a lot of large things coming up and down the river in the Williamsburg County area right then.
It's interesting that probably 1800s, early 1900s, the river was used more as a for industry and for economy than it is nowadays.
Well, the rivers always were the point of entry way back in colonial times, whether it was Georgetown and Winyaw Bay, and then they came further inland. In 1732, there's Kingstree. It just so happens that Kingstree's on Black River, which empties into Winyaw Bay. That's no mistake. That's not by accident. And the very fact that Kingstree, the tree is on the river. Mark that tree for the king. They didn't find it coming through the swamps somewhere. Down the road, they came up the river and saw it. It's always been some form of transportation there. And it's as important now as it was then, just in different ways.
Yeah. Up until 100 years, or maybe 80 years ago, the river was central. And then now the highways have taken over, and it's like, but you know what? I guess it is a good thing that logs aren't floated down the river nowadays, or it's not used as much, because it has become a little more naturalized.
Well, you also don't see in this immediate area really large virgin stands of cypress trees. I think that because of that industry,
They were all cut down.
they were milled, they were cut. You know. But yet, there are some pockets that you will find with some really big cypress trees still that we'll see later on.
Yeah, I'd love to see some of the largest ones up here.
But who knows how many hundreds or thousands of years old they are.
Yeah, I mean that same Taxodium distinctum at one point might have had bison beneath it, or elk, wolves, all these. John Lawson, who came up he was the first European explorer that came up the Santee, or at least that made record of it. And he talked about seeing lions and tigers. And
Come on.
two different species of big cat. And so I'm assuming, probably one of those was like our puma, our Rocky Mountain lion. But maybe those tigers, maybe that was a jaguar that he saw, because I do believe that the Black Panther myth, I believe that there were melanistic jaguars in this area until recently.
I've heard big cats in the wood here, all in the swamp.
Yeah.
I've heard them multiple times, but I don't know whether maybe that was a bobcat or something. But through the swamp, it sounds like a lion or a tiger or whatever.
I've done some digging into it because my parents, when we lived near where Wedgefield is now, when I was real little, and there was a farmer that lived nearby. His name was C.B. Robinson, and apparently he shot a black panther, and had the pelt hanging in his house or his farm or whatever. And my dad and mom both said, no, we saw that pelt, and then they also had a sighting of what my mom believes was a black panther. She thought it was a black lab at first, but that tail just, that long 6-foot tail.
And he did say that,
it
didn't
was
he?
20 feet away, and he says that, he's a river guy.
He would know.
He would know, and he said that
He wouldn't exaggerate.
it was a black panther.
Every time I hear somebody say something, I say, you saw a black bear.
Well, yeah, or a big dog.
Or a big dog, right.
But the idea is that it could be these melanistic jaguars, because jaguars have been found in Mexico and Texas. They range all the way up that far. It's not beyond belief that maybe in the, you go back 50 years and maybe there was a population of some sort of big cat, remaining in these swamps. I think it's fascinating to think of that, and if we did have a big cat population, just how special would that be, right?
That would be special.
Yeah, there's a chance there's still a few out there. I know that mountain lions do range. They range this far. There was one caught in like '97. I did one night did a whole deep dive online just looking into big cat sightings in South Carolina, and there was a male mountain lion caught up near Greenville, trapped, and they said it was 183 pounds. I mean, a big cat. Like, and in the mid 90s they caught it.
Wow.
I don't know if that's big
I think you got a better chance of seeing a plaid eye in the swamp here than one of those big cats.
Yeah. Oh, probably.
They'll see you if they're out here way before you see them.
Hey,
For sure.
When I was a kid, and I went out on the river with a family and stayed at their river cabin, and I was one of the youngest kids in the group. All these older boys, I was maybe 10 or 11. They're all like teenagers. And they had me scared to death. They said, the plaid eye's coming. You'll see him coming down the river. You'll see that one big bright light.
That's right.
It's right on his head. You'll see that one bright light, just like that. And I said, what? No, you kidding me? I said, no, and it was serious as could be. And I was out there, and it was dark as this that night, and we're in the middle of nowhere on Black River, and all these weird sounds you'd hear, not like things you'd hear in the city growing up. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, there was a light shining down the river.
No.
And I said, there it is, the plaid eye. There it is, it's coming. I got so scared, I almost started crying. And yeah, I went running to one of the men, and he saw I was upset I got. He said, no, that's Mr. Frank pulling a trick on you. That's his flashlight down the river.
Man.
I think I heard another train coming in the distance.
I heard that too, yeah.
We're not super close to the tracks here, but it will echo through the swamp here pretty good.
I love the sound of
So
the train.
always look for the flat eye. You see that light, don't move.
Oh, is that like a local urban legend or something?
Got a jingle.
Flat eye? I never heard that.
Got a jingle to keep it away. Yeah, there's some good stories online.
Yeah.
You Google flat eye.
I want to look it up because I remember them telling us about it, and I think someone might have even done the similar thing, gone out in the distance and started shining a light. And
scared me
we all
good
got
that night.
scared.
Oh, they scared me so good that night. So well. All right. Can't tell which direction it's coming from. But they basically blow the whistle in Salters and in Kingstree. They're coming through.
We enjoyed our dinner of fresh mussels gathered right there beside the camp. And as we got into our hammocks, we listened to trains roll by through Salters and into Kingstree, and then the calls and chatter of barred owls echoing through these swamps. It's eerie and beautiful at the same time. You can feel the spirit of this place. And even when we heard the call of coyotes in the distance, and then the responding barks of dogs, I had no fear. For some reason, I feel safe in this place. The spirit brings me no harm. I slept like a baby in my hammock, with Falcor right underneath, curled up in his little sleeping bag. A possum came into camp at some point, as I was awoken by his growls and tugs from his leash. But we went back to sleep and slept wonderfully on that first night.
It's almost exclusively natural. There's very little development on this entire 10-mile stretch here from town down to what's known as Lower Bridge, a historical bridge as far as Revolutionary War and also war between the states. So it's a kind of unique area. But this area, with its natural beauty, of course, one of the problems is the fact that in all of Williamsburg County, as large geographically as it is, and Black River runs from one side of it to the other, there's only 3 public accesses in the entire county to Black River, and 2 of them are in the city limits of Kingstree. And so consequently, this is totally inaccessible to almost everyone to see. Now, there's private access to the river everywhere, but it's a question of public access. Who can get on the river to enjoy the recreation that we've enjoyed as we've been on the river, and I've been doing for the last 46 years. It's just an incredible place to have. It's an incredible place to keep in this way. And that's one of the big things that concerns is, can we preserve it? Can we keep it like this for our grandchildren the way that our ancestors enjoyed the river the same way that we do? One of the things, if we could get public access, doesn't mean a big development or anywhere, because as part of this process of the proposed river trail and proposed state park, there's already been access to property along this stretch of river, but we've got to be able to have access to get on the river. And like some of this private access that we have here, being maybe 7 to 8 miles downriver from Kingstree, and maybe only 2 miles away from other tracts that have already been purchased, is a perfect little section where you could have kayaking, camping, any type of adventure on the river for families, as well as different youth groups or whatever, to take advantage of, which aren't available right now and haven't been because of the lack of access. But this river offers so much potential for things like that without even changing it. All you got to do is just be able to get access to it. And by doing that, I think we could have a win-win for everybody. The locals, the landowners, the hunters, the fishermen, the people that want to come in from out of county or out of state for recreation. With that balance, I think we can make it work. And everybody's got to be a part of that. You can't leave out one of those groups. By doing that, I think we got a great opportunity here to have something special. Because remember, in South Carolina, there is no state park that is just a river. It's always a land destination that you go in and you're there. A unique situation that we have that could really be beautiful.
It truly is a beautiful and unique situation that we have here on our Black River. We should be thankful that organizations like the Open Space Institute, the Nature Conservancy, the Black River Cypress Preserve, and many more have been conserving and preserving these beautiful places. But we still face a problem. Access is only part of the issue. With increased access comes increased responsibilities. How do we ensure that these places remain undestroyed for future generations downstream?
This is a generational problem that we're trying to solve, a generational thing we're trying to do and build and preserving this river. And one of the important things we need to think about that I'm so passionate about is the educational side of it. I believe that by getting children out here, whether it's school classes, summer camps, youth groups, educating the youth of our county on just how amazing these places are and how important they are, and the wildlife, the things you can see, the spiritual side of it, once you get away from the highway, the silence. If we can get children experiencing that, I think they'll grow up with a greater respect for wild places, and that will lead to a culture that, conserves more and preserves more and becomes greater stewards. So this is we're talking a long generational goal, right? But this river, this is kind of our best bet. If we get children out here, it's going to make a huge difference in who those children grow up to be, right?
Well, you made a great point there, because already at certain access points downriver, they've already had youth groups. They've already had school groups coming to experience the fauna and the flora of the area, of the river, and actually get on the river. And there are locals that don't know the river. They know they can walk down to the bank of the river and fish on it, and that's all they know. Or they know maybe in Kingstree where they can go to the Gillen Park and there's a picnic area there. But that's the only access and the only places they know on the river. Maybe when they cross the bridge, they know, okay, there's the river. But they know nothing about what they can experience on the river. There's a lot of people that have been baptized in Black River through the years. A special type event for them and for their community and their family, and they always remember that. There's a lot of people that talk about Black River in a very reverential way. It was something that when they come back to Kingstree, maybe they don't live here anymore in Williamsburg County, but when they come back to Kingstree, they always want to go down and see the river, because the river is still here. The river is still theirs. And what you were talking about with the younger generation, We always have a concern with litter. Litter is always a concern. Everybody, everywhere you go, everybody thinks they've got a monopoly on litter bugs. It's not true, it's just everywhere. But if we can start with a little generational type movement to try to make a difference, maybe those teenagers will think twice before they throw their trash out the window of the car, or even if they're on the river, dump it into the river. Or maybe they'll say something to their grandfather when he's fishing on the river and just happens to throw the bottle out into the river when he's through. Or maybe the towns will start putting receptacles at all river points and saying, please put your trash here, or have a little signage there, or who knows, even have a dispenser with trash cans, trash bags that when you get on the river you can carry it with you. There's got to be some start somewhere. You can't just say, well, that's a problem we've always had. It's always been.
It's certainly a problem that we could solve. I mean, all of those things: education, making it easy, having trash bags, receptacles, teaching, raising a generation. That's what this river is for. I mean, we've been connected as long as humans have been in Georgetown County, in Williamsburg County. Humans have been on this river. This is connected to who we are, and it's only until the last 100 years that our society has gotten away from our waterways as much as we have. So this is surely a special place.
I've been on other rivers. I've been in other states. There are places that they've made a difference. It's not easy. Like I say, we don't have a monopoly on litter bugs. I was on the Colorado River recently. They were very concerned about that same thing, but they've turned the corner on it. They've made people aware of it, and you don't see near the volume of trash that you used to see on that river decades ago. We've got to start somewhere. We've got to make a difference, and maybe this is the first moment of where we can do that. With a proposed river trail, proposed state park, we can't just keep going the way we are, because we're going to lose our beautiful natural state of our river. We do cleanups every year already. We've gotten more people aware of it. By doing that, there's more talk of that on social media. It's a starting point. We've got to do something.
The final thing I want to touch on is how safe this river, and this stretch particularly, the Black River is such a safe river. There are far fewer alligators here. There are some snakes in the summertime, but it is a shallow, sandy river. I think at the deepest I've gotten was chest deep, but most of the time we've been walking. The water is pretty low, but this is a safe river as well.
This is a safe river, but it's also nature controlled. And occasionally Mother Nature can get upset. And in 2015, we had an incredible flood here. And where we're in the river right now, and I'm maybe in 2.5 feet of water right here. We were probably in 20 feet then in October 2015. So Mother Nature can get after you sometimes, but one of the great things about this river is that there is no man-made control on it. It's totally nature. And if we can maintain that, we can control some of that. What we can control, we'll try. What Mother Nature does, we adjust to. But it's such a natural state. It's such a beautiful setting. The water is dark. It's tanned by the tannins coming off the roots and the leaves of these trees that are along the bank for tens of miles here. But it's crystal clear. It's clean water. It's beautiful sandy banks in different areas where if the water's low, we have the ability to have a nice campsite on a sandy bank. It's just fantastic for so many different people with so many different interests. The fishing here, people come from all over to fish in Black River. It's well known through the years for the especially for the brim and red breast that they catch out of the river. It's just a nice setting.
Georgetown, saltwater, and then Black River, I'm in love with you.
I think so too.
Cypress knees and tall oak trees, black water way down below. I love your looks and I love the feel of your black mud between my toes. Oh, let me stay. You make me feel good and you never make me blue. That's why I brag about you. Black River, I'm in love with you. A box full of crickets and a pocket full of worms, a little jellyfish and cane.
Looks like a fun little raptor right there.
I can run to you. You seem to settle my brain. Let me say again. You make me feel good and you never make me blue.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the Black River Paddle. If you'd like to support our work, give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe on YouTube. MLNL Media, Marsh Dean, and Tim Bean. And if you want to support the Black River, check out the Winyah Rivers Alliance, a wonderful nonprofit dedicated to protecting the 5 great rivers that flow into the Winyah Bay. Be sure to stay tuned for the next episode of the Black River Paddle coming out next week as we make our way slowly towards the Winyah Bay. We pass by limestone cliffs, get to explore Kelly's Cave, and go underneath the lower bridge, learning about how the river saved Kingstree twice. Tune in next week for the second episode of the Black River Paddle. Thank you so much.